My name is Beverly Kane. I drove 8 hours straight from Chicago to the middle of nowhere near Cincinnati because my mom said she missed me. She didn't just say it once either. She said it in a way that wrapped itself around your throat. Voicemail after voicemail, each one softer than the last, like she was wearing herself down on purpose. She went on about how the holidays weren't the same without family, how everyone was going to be there, how it would mean so much if we could all just be together again like old times. That last part came with crying, her voice cracking halfway through, the kind of cry that makes you feel like a monster if you don't respond. I listened to it twice before I called her back. I told her yes, I said I'd come. And I meant it too, in the way you mean things when you still have that stubborn hope that maybe the people who hurt you can also be the people who finally get it right. I cleared my work schedule. I postponed a trip I'd been planning for months. I booked a dog sitter for the week, the kind who sends photo updates so you don't worry while you're gone. I bought gifts, real ones, not gift cards, not last-minute candles from the drugstore. I picked things out, one for my mom, one for my dad, one for my sister, even small things for the kids, because I was trying to show up like the kind of person who still believed in family traditions. The whole drive, I kept thinking that maybe this year would be different. That maybe, just maybe, they actually wanted me there, not for what I could do, not for what I could cover, just me. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was dark. The street was dead quiet, one of those neighborhoods that look so perfect they almost feel staged. Wreaths on doors, soft porch lights, tidy lawns, even in winter. I sat in my car for a second and checked my phone. A text from my sister. "Hurry up, I have to pee." It didn't make sense until later. I grabbed my bag, walked up the path, and rang the doorbell. I still had a key from years ago, but something in me didn't want to use it. It felt too familiar, too loaded, like I'd be letting myself in to be disappointed. The door opened, and my mom stood there with a big smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Good," she said brightly, like she'd been waiting for a delivery. "You're here." Before I could even step fully inside, she said it, casual as a weather report. "You're going to take care of your sister's kids. We're going to Hawaii." For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard her, like my brain refused to arrange those words into meaning. I stood in the foyer holding my bag, staring at her face, trying to find the punchline. But she just stepped aside as if it had already been decided, like I'd volunteered earlier and forgotten. Behind her, my dad was already moving through the living room with a suitcase, and then Mandy walked by in flip-flops and a tank top. Mid-December. Dressed like the beach was already calling her name. She didn't even look at me, the way you look at family you missed. She looked at me the way you look at a tool you finally found in the garage. Useful. Expected. Then she leaned down toward her kids and muttered, loud enough for me to hear, "Kids, don't wipe your feet on her." My parents burst out laughing. My dad, my mom, Mandy. Like it was a joke I was supposed to join in on. The kids yelled something I couldn't understand and ran off, already wired, already loud, already treating the house like a playground. I stood there in the entryway with my bag in my hand and a cold, sinking feeling spreading through my chest. "What do you mean?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay level. "You're going to Hawaii." My mom blinked at me like I was slow. "We're leaving tomorrow morning," she said. "We already have the tickets. It's just a week. We need you to watch the kids." My dad chimed in like this was obvious. "It'll be good for you. Get out of the city. Family time." Mandy waved a hand like she was bored. "They'll be fine," she said. "Just don't let them eat marshmallows after dark. They go wild." I stared at them. "And you didn't think to ask me." My mom's smile tightened. "Beverly," she said, soft, warning. "Don't start. You're here now. It's done." Done. That word again. The family's favorite. The word that means your feelings are inconvenient and the decision has already been made around you. Then my mom added sweetly, like she was doing me a favor, "You're not doing anything anyway, right?" That's when something in me shifted. Not anger yet. Something quieter. Something that felt like the last thread snapping. Because I had been doing something. I'd had plans. I'd rearranged my entire life for this. And they hadn't even cared enough to wonder what I was giving up. So I told them. I didn't plan to say it right then. I didn't rehearse it. It just came out, like my mouth was tired of keeping secrets for people who never protected me. "I got an offer," I said. "I'm moving across the country in 2 weeks. This is a huge step up for me, and this is going to be the last Christmas I'm around for a long time." The room fell silent. My dad looked like he'd swallowed something sharp. My mom's smile broke in half. Mandy rolled her eyes like my life was an inconvenience. And in that silence, I realized the truth. They didn't beg me to come home because they missed me. They begged me because they needed something, and I had just walked 8 hours into their trap. My mom recovered first. She always did. She had this talent for smoothing over uncomfortable moments by pretending they weren't happening. Like denial was a family tradition she'd perfected over decades. "Oh, honey," she said, voice suddenly softer, gentler, the same tone she used when I was a kid and she wanted me to stop crying in public. "That's wonderful. Really, we're proud of you." My dad nodded like he agreed, but his eyes kept flicking toward the suitcases, toward the hallway, toward the clock. Mandy didn't even bother pretending. She made a small sound, half scoff, half sigh, and turned away like my announcement had bored her. Then the begging started, and it was so fast, so rehearsed, that it didn't even feel like it was about me. 2 weeks is still 2 weeks, my mom said quickly. "This won't change anything. We just need you for a few days, that's all." My dad stepped in. "It's Hawaii, Beverly. It's not like we're moving away forever. We'll be back before you know it." Mandy waved her hand again, already in vacation mode. "You can handle a week," she said. "You don't even have kids. It's not that deep." I stared at her, and for a second, my mind went blank in the way it does when something is too insulting to process. I wasn't angry yet. Not fully. I felt hollow. Like all the hope I'd packed into that 8-hour drive was leaking out through a hole I hadn't noticed until now. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my bag. I didn't storm out. I just stood there and let it wash over me like cold water. Because the truth was, I'd played this role before. The flexible one. The one who drops everything. The one who gets guilted into showing up and then gets treated like staff. The difference this time was that I could see the script in their hands. I could see the stage lights. I could see where they wanted me to stand. I asked one question, calm and quiet. "When did you buy the tickets?" My mom's face flickered. Just a tiny twitch, but I saw it. "A while ago," she said. "How long is a while?" I pressed. My dad cleared his throat. "Doesn't matter." It mattered. It mattered because it meant this had been planned long before my mom started leaving crying voicemails. It meant they weren't inviting me back for the holidays. They were scheduling me. But I didn't argue. Not yet. That night, they kept moving around me like I was already part of the furniture. My mom gave Mandy the guest bathroom towels. My dad asked if Mandy's passports were in the kitchen drawer. Mandy shouted at her kids to stop jumping on the couch. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked what I'd given up to be there. No one even offered to make me tea after the drive. When it was time to sleep, my mom pointed toward the basement. "You can sleep down there," she said. "We turned your old room into something more useful." Something more useful. I walked downstairs with my bag and found the basement exactly the way you'd expect when a house has stopped making space for you. The air smelled faintly like dust and old cardboard. Toys were scattered everywhere like a minefield. Legos, half-broken dolls, a greasy iPad playing obnoxious cartoons at full volume even though it was almost midnight. A thin futon sat in the corner where my childhood bed used to be, the sheet wrinkled like someone had thrown it on 5 minutes ago. I sat on the edge of it and stared at the ceiling, listening to muffled laughter upstairs. They were excited. They were buzzing with vacation energy. They were packing and planning and treating me like a solved problem. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, the house was chaos. My mom yelling about sunscreen even though it was December. My dad grumbling about the airline app not loading. Mandy trying to wrangle her kids while shoving snacks into a tote bag like she was prepping for an expedition. The kids were already sugared up from cereal, running through the hallway at full speed, screaming for their tablets. No one looked at me until it was time to leave. Then suddenly my mom appeared with her suitcase already being rolled out the door. "Thank you again for doing this," she said, lips stretched into a smile. "I mean it. You're a lifesaver." She handed me a sheet of printer paper like she was giving me instructions for watering a plant. Bedtimes, snack preferences, a list of shows they were allowed to watch, which mostly said anything but horror or the news. As if I was the kind of person who would sit a child down and turn on a crime documentary for fun. Mandy leaned in, sunglasses on, already living in her beach fantasy. "Please don't let them eat marshmallows after dark," she said. "They go wild." Then she slapped a $20 bill into my hand and said, "For pizza or something." A 20. For a week. I stared at it for half a second, then folded it slowly, carefully, like if I moved too fast, I might finally explode. They backed out of the driveway like they were running from something. My dad honked once as they disappeared down the street, and just like that, the house went quiet except for the sound of 2 children arguing over a remote. I stood in the foyer, holding the paper and the $20, listening to my sister's kids tear through the living room, and it hit me in a way it hadn't fully hit the night before. They didn't just assume I'd do it. They assumed I couldn't say no. The first day was brutal. The kids were loud, restless, bored, and wired. In the way only kids can be when their routine is broken and their mother is gone. They fought over toys, screamed over snacks, whined about being hungry, even while chewing. I kept trying to keep it calm, keep it normal, but they could feel the instability in the air. By the time afternoon came, my nerves felt raw. Around 3 p.m., I went looking for the Wi-Fi password because the iPad kept buffering and the kids were about to riot. I opened the drawer where my mom kept random papers, expecting sticky notes and old coupons. Instead, I found a folder. Inside was their flight itinerary, the hotel confirmation, the rental car reservation, spa add-ons, snorkeling tour, 5 nights at a luxury resort, and the receipt, charged to my credit card. My credit card, the one Mandy had access to years ago when she begged me to help her book something urgent and swore she'd cancel it afterward. Apparently, she never did. My breath left my lungs like someone punched me. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the page until the words blurred. I checked again. My name, my card, my points. It wasn't just that they were using me for babysitting. They were using me to fund the trip. And suddenly, the crying voicemail, the rushed, "We miss you," the pressure to come home, the weird text from Mandy telling me to hurry up. It all clicked into place. This wasn't a holiday invitation. It was a setup. I picked up my phone and called the hotel. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I kept my voice polite, steady, almost calm enough to scare myself. I asked them to confirm the reservation. They did. It was mine. It was in my name. It was charged to my card. And in that moment, something inside me went perfectly still. Because now I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't cancel it right away. That surprised me about myself. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, the folder spread open in front of me like evidence at a crime scene. Flight numbers, hotel names. My credit card digits half hidden but unmistakable. My reward points listed neatly, as if I'd volunteered them. The house around me was loud again. The kids yelling upstairs over a game, one of them stomping so hard the ceiling rattled. Life kept going like nothing had happened, and that almost made it worse. I called the hotel first, just to hear it out loud one more time. The receptionist was polite, efficient, completely unaware she was talking to someone whose family had just detonated her trust. "Yes, Ms. Kane," she said. "The reservation is under your name. 5 nights. Ocean View Suite. Spa package and excursions included." "And it's all been charged," I said. "Yes, ma'am, paid in full." I thanked her and hung up. Then I called the rental car company. Same answer. Same calm confirmation. Same feeling in my chest, like something had cracked cleanly in two. It wasn't rage yet. Rage comes later. This was clarity, the kind that doesn't shake, the kind that settles. I looked at the time. 11:17 p.m. They were probably landing in Hawaii right about then, probably laughing, probably posting photos already, probably assuming I'd be angry, but manageable, that I'd complain, maybe cry, but eventually fix it like I always had. I opened my laptop. I didn't slam the keys. I didn't rush. I took my time, like I was doing something delicate instead of destructive. One reservation at a time. Hotel first. I explained that I was the card holder and that the reservation had been made without my authorization. The representative put me on hold, came back, apologized, and processed the cancellation. "No refunds," she said carefully. "That's fine," I replied. The email confirmation hit my inbox a minute later. Reservation canceled, room released. Then the rental car, then the excursions. Snorkeling tour canceled, spa package canceled. Transportation returned to inventory. One by one, I watched the plans evaporate. The vacation they'd been packing for all week unraveled, quietly, neatly, without drama. By the time I closed my laptop, it was just after midnight. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel guilty either. I felt done. The kids finally fell asleep around 1 in the morning, tangled in blankets, exhausted from the emotional whiplash of being dropped and forgotten. I tucked them in, turned off the lights, and stood there for a moment watching their chests rise and fall. None of this was their fault. They were just collateral in a game their mother had been playing for years. I went out to the back porch with a beer I found in the garage fridge. The night air was cold, sharp enough to clear my head. The sky above the yard was washed out by city light. No stars, just an orange haze. Still, it was quiet. The first real quiet I'd had since I arrived. At 11:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Mom. I didn't answer. Then my dad. Then Mandy. Over and over, until finally a text came through from my sister. Why are we locked out of the hotel? What's going on? I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't answer. Another buzz, another text. Did you cancel the reservation? Tell me you didn't. Still nothing. Then, just past 12:30, the message that flipped the switch. I used your card because it was easier. I was going to pay you back later. You're such a drama queen. Grow up and fix this. That one got a response. Don't worry about it, I typed. I'm done fixing things for you. The phone went quiet for about 10 minutes. Then the tone changed. My dad called again. This time his voicemail was different. Slower. Careful. He said it must be a misunderstanding. That maybe the card was still active by accident. That they were in a bind and just needed a little time to sort things out. My mom sent a long paragraph that read like a confession and a guilt trip stitched together. She said she didn't realize the card was still active. She said Mandy thought she'd asked me. She said family doesn't do this to each other. Mandy didn't say anything at all. That silence told me everything. By the next morning, the anger was gone from their messages. In its place was panic. I woke up to 12 missed calls, 2 blocked voicemails, and a string of texts from my mom that read like a prayer. Each one softer than the last. Each one more desperate. They weren't staying in a resort anymore. They were at some cheap motel near the airport. No beach, no air conditioning, no refund. And apparently Mandy's kids had gotten food poisoning from gas station sushi. I almost laughed. Instead, I made the kids pancakes. Chocolate chips this time. I let them watch whatever they wanted. I stopped trying to be strict. Once they realized I wasn't there to replace their parents, they calmed down. We spent the afternoon building the ugliest pillow fort I'd ever seen. One of them told me, completely serious, Mom says deep breathing makes us less annoying. That night, just before bedtime, the front door flew open. No knock, no warning. Mandy stood there in flip-flops, her hair a mess, her forehead sunburned. My mom was behind her, looking like she'd aged 5 years in 3 days. My dad came in last, dragging their battered luggage like they'd just fled something. You think this is funny? Mandy snapped. The kids froze. I told them to go upstairs. They did, but not before one of them whispered, Told you she'd come back mad. When they were out of earshot, Mandy let loose. She called me selfish, said I'd ruined her only real vacation in years, that I was spiteful and childish and couldn't handle being asked to do one thing for my family. My mom stood behind her, nodding, like this was all just a misunderstanding I needed to apologize for. I let Mandy talk. 5 full minutes. Then I reached for the envelope on the kitchen table and slid it toward my mother. What's this? She asked, confused. That's the bank statement, I said calmly. And this, I pulled out a second sheet, is the notice from my lawyer. I reported the fraud. The room went very, very quiet. For a moment, no one spoke. My mom stared at the papers, like they might rearrange themselves into something less terrifying if she just waited long enough. My dad took a step forward, then stopped, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Mandy recovered first, as always. Her shock hardened into anger so fast it was almost impressive. You're kidding, she said. You actually did that? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You used my credit card without permission, I said. Over $4,000. You know what that's called. Mandy laughed, sharp and brittle. Oh my God. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It's family. No judge is going to take this seriously. My mom finally looked up. Beverly? She whispered, like she was trying to calm a wild animal. Honey, let's just slow down. We can fix this. You didn't have to take it this far. That word again. Fix. Before I could answer, Mandy made her mistake. She crossed her arms and said, Go ahead. Report it. Do you really think Mom and Dad are going to leave anything to someone who stabs their own family in the back? My mom gasped, horrified that it had been said out loud. My dad turned away, rubbing his forehead. But Mandy didn't stop. She never did once she felt cornered. You think you're smart, she went on. You think you can scare us with lawyers? You need us. You always have. I smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was clarifying. Thank you, I said, for confirming exactly how you see me. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I should warn you, I added calmly. I don't make threats I can't back up. I tapped the screen and hit play. Mandy's voice filled the kitchen. loud and unmistakable, recorded 2 days earlier in a voicemail she'd left me when she thought bullying would still work. "I used your card because it was easier," her voice snarled. "You always fix things. Just grow up and fix it like you always do." The color drained from her face. "You recorded me?" she said, her voice suddenly small. "I saved it," I replied, "and I already sent it to my lawyer." My mom sank into a chair like her legs had given out. My dad stayed where he was, staring at the wall, like it might explain how everything had gone so wrong. Mandy swore under her breath, then spun toward the door. "This isn't over," she snapped. "You're going to regret this." I didn't answer. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The house went quiet in a way I'd never heard before. Not tense, not awkward. Empty. I stayed one more night. Not for them, for the kids. We watched a movie. I made them popcorn. I tucked them in and listened to them argue softly about which stuffed animal got the pillow. When the house finally went dark, I packed my bag. I left before sunrise. I didn't clean the kitchen. I didn't fold the blanket on the basement futon. I didn't write a note. I placed the house key on the counter and walked out the same door they'd walked out of when they left me behind without asking. I drove straight back to Chicago, 8 hours without stopping. My phone buzzed constantly on the passenger seat, but I didn't look. I already knew what was happening. Mandy was rewriting the story. About halfway through Indiana, I pulled over for gas and checked my phone. 62 missed messages, 12 voicemails, 6 calls from unknown numbers, and the family group chat, the one that had been silent for years, was suddenly alive with over 100 messages. Mandy had gone into overdrive. She'd sent a carefully edited version of events to every relative with a phone. According to her, I'd ruined her vacation out of spite. I'd manipulated them into using my card, then turned around and threatened legal action. She ended it with, "Family means nothing to her. She's changed." That last part was true. I scrolled, and then something unexpected happened. The first reply came from my Aunt Melanie, just one sentence. "Didn't you once borrow my car for a weekend and return it 2 months later with a broken window?" Another message popped up from my cousin Josh. "Beverly doesn't need to manipulate anyone. She's the only one in this family with a job that doesn't involve commissions or excuses." Then another. Then another. Stories I'd never heard before. Old debts. Unpaid loans. Times Mandy showed up late or not at all. Christmases she ruined. Birthdays she forgot. Someone called her a walking tax write-off. Someone else said she made guests pay for their own food at her kid's birthday party. My mom tried to step in once. "Let's all calm down," she wrote. No one listened. By the time I pulled into my apartment's parking garage, the group chat was on fire. The alliance Mandy had always relied on was collapsing under its own weight. She'd finally given everyone permission to say what they'd been swallowing for years. That night, my dad called. He didn't say hello. He jumped straight into a tired explanation about how things had gotten out of hand, how Mandy never meant to use the card, how maybe it would be best if we all just sat down and talked like adults. I asked him one question. "Why didn't you stop it when you saw it happening?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I didn't think it was that serious." That had always been the problem. Nothing was serious to them unless it cost them something. The knock came the next morning, just before noon. I hadn't slept much. I'd been lying awake replaying the night over and over, not with regret, but with a strange sense of finality. Like something heavy had finally been set down after being carried for too long. When the knock echoed through my apartment, I already knew who it was. I opened the door to find my mother standing in the hallway. She looked smaller somehow. Her hair was pulled back the way she used to wear it when I was a kid, and she was trying to look composed while angry or scared. She was wearing the same coat she always wore when she was upset but didn't want anyone to notice. The coat she wore to parent-teacher meetings, to hospital waiting rooms, to moments where she needed to appear strong. "I drove all night," she said quietly. "I need to talk to you." I didn't invite her in. We stood there in the hallway, the door half open, the city humming faintly through the windows behind me. She told me Mandy had locked herself in her room, that the kids were staying with their dad for the week, that my father wasn't speaking to anyone, that the family was falling apart. And then she said the part she thought would bring me back into place. "You have to help fix this." I let her talk. I let her cry softly. I let her explain how hard things had been for Mandy, how stressful the world was, how being a single mother wasn't easy, how mistakes had been made, but surely family could work through them. She said I was overreacting. She said she understood why I was hurt, but that I was making things worse by standing my ground. "Do you really want to be the reason this family breaks apart?" she asked. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I told her the truth. I didn't break this family, I said calmly. I just stopped holding it together by myself. She tried to say something else. I didn't let her finish. I'm not going to set myself on fire to keep you warm, I said. Not again. Not ever again. She stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was anymore. Maybe she didn't. I stepped back and gently closed the door. I stood there for a few seconds after it clicked shut, listening. She didn't knock again. She didn't call my name. After a while, I heard the soft whir of the elevator at the end of the hall. That was the last time I saw my mother face to face. Later that day, my attorney called. Mandy had finally responded through a lawyer. They weren't denying the charges outright. They were trying to spin it, claiming I had implied consent by once sharing access to the card years ago. My attorney laughed when he explained it. She wants this to go away quietly, he said. She knows she doesn't have a case. I didn't answer right away. That evening, I got a message from someone I didn't expect. Mandy's ex. He said he'd heard what happened, that he wasn't surprised, that he'd been through something similar years ago. Different situation, same pattern. Guilt, manipulation, entitlement. And when it didn't work, threats and victimhood. You're not the first person she's used, he told me over the phone. You're just the first one who fought back. That stuck with me. By the end of the week, my lawyer drafted a final offer. No court, no charges, no public embarrassment. One condition. Full repayment of every dollar charged to my card, in writing, through her lawyer, within 90 days. No extensions, no excuses. Mandy's response was predictable. A tantrum dressed up as a legal email. She claimed she didn't have the money, that this would ruin her, that I was punishing her children. That last part made my hands shake. I told my lawyer to proceed. The next few weeks were quiet in the way storms get quiet before they move on. My mother went radio silent. My father sent a generic card in the mail about forgiveness and healing. I threw it away without opening it. Then, one afternoon, the confirmation came through. Full repayment. Every dollar. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I was surprised, but because it confirmed something I already knew. She wasn't sorry. She was scared. I made one last trip a few weeks later. Not to see anyone. Just to empty a storage unit I'd been paying for near my parents' house for years. Boxes of things I'd kept because they felt like proof of belonging. Old clothes. Books. A broken game controller I never fixed. A shoebox full of family photos, bent at the corners, smelling faintly of dust. I looked through maybe 5 of them. Then I closed the box and left it behind in the donation pile. I thought I'd feel something. I didn't. On the drive back, my aunt texted to invite me to a small family gathering she was planning. Thanksgiving was coming up. She said she hoped I'd come. I thanked her and said no. Thanksgiving came and went. She later sent me a photo of the dinner table. Half the chairs were empty. Mandy didn't show up. Neither did my parents. She wrote, "No one really missed the drama." Christmas came next. For the first time in my life, I didn't go home. I stayed in Chicago and went to a holiday misfits potluck hosted by a coworker. A group of people who'd all cut ties with toxic families sat around drinking boxed wine, eating overcooked lasagna, and playing stupid board games. It was loud and awkward and imperfect. It was also the best Christmas I'd had in years. There was a guy there who barely spoke. Quiet. Awkward. He mentioned he'd gone no contact with his dad after years of emotional manipulation. At some point, he asked me how I knew it was time to leave. I told him something I'd read once, years ago, back when I still thought maybe I was the problem. If they didn't treat you like family when they had you, I said, they can't call it betrayal when you leave. That truth settled into me like it had always been waiting there. Months passed. No calls, no guilt-laced messages, no sudden emergencies. The silence stretched, and instead of feeling empty, it felt easy. In February, I cleaned out the last of what tied me to that old version of my life. I donated what I didn't want. I threw away what didn't matter. I stopped carrying pieces of people who never carried me. Then, one afternoon, I got a final text from Mandy. 4 words. "Are you happy now?" I didn't reply, because I wasn't the kind of happy that jumps up and down or posts quotes online. I was the quiet kind. The kind where you wake up and your stomach isn't in knots. The kind where your plans belong to you. The kind where you stop feeling like someone else's backup plan. I don't talk to them anymore. I probably never will. But I don't hate them. I don't wish them pain. I just don't wish them anything. And I think that's what peace really looks like.